So here's a quick video showing you how to attach the tissue paper to the shape. Okay, I've got a number of things here. I've got a bristle brush and I've got a little bit of glue in a cup. I've got some paper towels. I've got a cup with water so that I can wash off my brush. And I think that's all I need. An X-Acto knife to cut paper with, and sometimes I have a little piece of plastic around so that the tissue paper doesn't glue to my scrap piece of cardboard that everything is sitting on top of. Okay, so I've got my shape, and I am going to. I don't want the glue to be too. I'm taking a little bit of water just on my brush and putting it on the glue so that it's just a little more liquidy. I like to keep my glue in something that I can have a lid to, and then I can have more glue at my disposal, because I can put a lid on it and it won't dry up. So whether that's a prescription bottle or whatever it is. And then I'm going to paint the glue onto my sticks. Okay. And I don't need a lot of glue, I just need it to be wet. I just need it to not dry before I get the tissue paper on it. And I usually try to just glue to two sides at a time. I don't try to do the whole thing at once, because that can be really, it can be very, it just turns into a mess and everything ends up looking horrible. A disaster. It can turn into a disaster. So I'm just gluing two edges. I'm going to put tissue paper on this side and this side. And so there's some glue there. And if I accidentally put glue somewhere that I don't want it, I don't really worry about it too much. So I'm going to leave the brush in there and then remind myself which parts I glued. So I'm going to put it down here, and I'm just going to make sure that it's adhered in the way that I want it to. I don't want things to be wrinkly. And then I'm just going to bend it. I'm going to bend the tissue paper this way. And just lightly stretch so that it goes in the right direction. Now ideally, so I'm just pressing to make sure that the tissue paper has adhered to the parts that I want it to adhere to. I try not to fuss with it too much. And you see that I didn't cut my tissue paper beforehand. I leave it enormous so that I can make sure that I get the right, then it's not too small, I don't have to mess around with it. So in an ideal world, if I wasn't filming this, I would just let it sit. I would just let it sit like this for a few minutes. It doesn't take a long time to dry, especially when you have the heat on in your house. But since I'm filming this and I want to show you kind of the whole step, I'm going to, this is not a very sharp knife. You never know what I might pick up to cut with, and sometimes it just doesn't do the trick. So now I am, let's zoom in a little bit. I'm just cutting around, and I'm leaving maybe about, I think about 1/4 of an inch. I'm leaving about 1/4 of an inch that I'll be able to fold over. Okay. So you see whenever I cut, I can cut it when it is flat on the ground. If it's nice and dry, then I could cut it going up and down. I'm trying to figure out how you can see that if I'm filming. Let's see if I go like this, and then if I poke the knife through and I make the knife a little bit longer, then I can cut down like this. I would test this before you do it on something that you care a lot about. That's why we do a little materials test. You can also use scissors. And again, this is extremely tricky when the glue is still wet. So I don't recommend doing this while the glue is still wet. But, so at this point I've got, the paper is glued, but there's all this excess, okay? So you'll notice that, like, if you look at it closely, the tissue paper gets a little wrinkly. It's not quite the way you want it, but once the water evaporates, once the glue dries, it does tend to shrink down a little bit, and then you're good to go. So now I've got my glue again, and I'm gonna take a little extra water and put it on my glue. I just don't like it when it's too gloppy, but definitely experiment with that. I'm going to use this little piece of plastic. You can use wax paper or just some plastic thing that you have hanging around, or just be careful on the newspaper. So now I am putting the glue on the paper. And I'm making sure to let the glue go right off the paper so that I really get the glue on the whole piece of paper. And then my brush doesn't have so much glue on it, and I can wrap the paper around the stick. Okay? And this seems very fiddly when you first start. Okay, but if you just use the, once you get the hang of it, it goes very quickly, and you can make these very big sculptures. Actually, last year, you'll see the images of the ones that we made last year, and you can make these enormous sculptures that look really cool. They're kind of translucent, and they work really well. So there, I've got the paper wrapped around one part, and then I'm gonna go and do the other part. And I've got my water and my glue so that I can just put a little extra water in the glue, and I don't know if you can see that. It really doesn't change it that much. All I'm doing is just wetting my brush and then putting it back in the glue, and that tends to give me the consistency that I want, because I don't really want it to be super gloppy. We want to avoid the glop. So I'll do this one at my regular speed instead of super duper slow. So I'm just coating the paper and going right off the paper, and then I pick it up and I just take the brush that now doesn't have a whole lot of glue on it, just a little bit of glue, and I just wrap the tissue paper around the sticks. Okay. So hopefully this gave you just a shorter video of how this paper wrapping goes, so that you don't have to go through like a 45-minute video. Okay, so that's what it looks like when it's got two parts wrapped. And then I put this somewhere on a piece of plastic or something that it won't stick to, and I put it aside to dry. The end.